evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the chambers and those who are watching us by live stream. I am calling the Standing Committee to order. It's the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee. And today we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. And first up, we'll have an adoption of the agenda, that the content of the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee agenda for June 17, 2019 be adopted as presented. If I could have a mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Hall. Councillor Hamlin, we have a couple of changes to speak to. With the committee's permission, we would like to move the deputation 5.3 to occur at item 6.4 immediately after Director Farr's presentation from staff. Are there any concerns with that change to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, then all those, there was no other changes, right? Okay, so no other changes. So all those in favor? And that is carried, so thank you. All right, any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Hamlin.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It would be item 6.3. It's a matter that declared a conflict on before. A lawyer in my husband's office asked for the owner of the property at 174 St. Paul Street.
Okay, thank you. So we'll have you recuse yourself at that time. Thank you. Any business arising from the previous meeting? And seeing none, then we will move on to deputations. And we are pleased to start with Mr. Don May. He's going to be speaking to us with respect to the Regional Government Review. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Chair Jeffrey and members of Council. Let me just go to the first slide. Or can I move? Okay. So just as a point of introduction, I'm a registered professional planner, Ontario land economist, and I have a residence and an office here in Collingwood. So over the last 40 years as a planner, I've specialized in healthcare and municipal asset maximization in my practice. The important point today is when I began my career over 40 years ago when regional governments were formed. So in 1973, coming out of planning school, there were all these planning jobs because we had all these regions formed in Ontario. And over time, some of those regions have become one tier. So Sudbury, Hamilton, Ottawa have become one tier, Toronto, of course. The remaining regions, the two-tier regions, are now under review. And every 20 years, we get a review of government regardless of who's in power and what's happening. So it's sort of a logical thing that happens in Ontario. And I think in this particular case, there's a lot of concern about the duplication with regions, specifically Peel and Halton, some of those regions, and the look to see if we can, based on our experience, have less duplication and bureaucracy between the two levels of government, where the two levels have to remain. So in terms of this regional government review, I facilitated the response from the town of Midland recently within the county of Simcoe and participated in a workshop. I was very privileged to be invited with the Monk School of Policy Research that was facilitated for the regional government review. And we had people from Vancouver, Winnipeg, different expertise dealing with what the advisors have to do in providing a report that's going to come out very soon in terms of the summer. Just if I can move that ahead. Yeah, so getting right to it, I'm always amazed in the wintertime when I'm on First Street down by McDonald's and the lights are on in the hill and you get that feel of the city and the town and the hill together. And we have this power of place in southern Georgian Bay that brings us all together in terms of what's going on. And that's a painting inside McDonald's that I always find fascinating because that's the feel that you get. This is one also at the corner of Simcoe and Hurontario, and you've got a marketing photograph that's used by the town, and you get this sense of the town and Blue Mountain in behind. So I won't get into all the details in the terms of reference for the regional government review. They're here. One of the big focuses is to, as I said, to make regions more efficient and less duplication to the future. And so that's happening regardless in that process. And there's other questions being done through the terms of reference. And again, this is what's being done for the existing situations where we have two-tier regions. So Sudbury, Ottawa, Hamilton are not part of this process now that they've become one tier. And maybe some of the regions, such as Niagara and Muskoka, may become one tier, and that through this study. But certainly back to Peel and Halton, how they move forward and how they're updated should they remain as two-tier is the subject of this review. And so we come to the County of Simcoe that was added at the last minute to the review. And this is difficult because the County of Simcoe has been around for 150 years and we're not a region. And the basic issue is that Barrie and Orillia are not at the table. The difference between a county and a region is that the large municipalities that are within the counties are not at the table in the county because of the historic aspect of this, but in regions, they're part of it. So Barrie would have to be at the table, Orillia would be at the table if a two-tiered region were created in Simcoe. And I'd like to bring it down to just one basic point that I'm trying to get across, and I felt obligated to come speak to you just as a resident and a professional, so that a lot of people aren't aware of how significant this report is right now in terms of government restructuring for this area. So what I'd like to say is this, that when we have counties, municipalities can be relatively small and get a lot of services from the county. And that relationship is there. And in fact, you know, a lot of our tax dollars goes to the County of Simcoe because you have the major services within the county. In a region, it's different in the sense that the municipalities are large enough, the region can focus on regional planning and large infrastructure. And that seems to be the way the review is going to make regions more nimble, more efficient and more focused. And municipalities then would deliver more services. So as in my view, and I'm just giving you my opinion, as if Simcoe is going to become a region, then the municipalities will be pressure for amalgamation, of course, to do more services so that the region can be more nimble. Why would Barrie want to come to the table and have a second government when they already look after most things that they have to do? So that's just my take on it, and I wanted to offer that. One of the really important studies in this area, and everybody should be aware of it, and they should read it, is an incredible study in 2011 that the town of Collingwood worked with the other 4 municipalities, Wasaga Beach, Clearview, and the town of Blue Mountain, and described this area in terms of its economy and what's happening. And this report is online. It's available actually on the town of Clearview site. If you go to the town of Clearview site, it's easily accessed, and it should be read by everybody to understand the dynamics of this area. And even though it's relatively old, I think it's really relevant. And from that study, there were a couple of comments that I just would bring to everybody's attention, and we all know this, that the 4 municipalities that comprise this region are mutually independent. Municipal boundaries are irrelevant to businesses, residents, and visitors when they shop, work, and play. And It's an important point whether somebody in Creemore goes to the Dan pub in Thornbury, they cross two county lines, they cross municipal lines of what they do, but for us in the community, it's simply going to the Dan pub from Creemore. And so that aspect of it is important, where people say, I'm coming to Collingwood to ski. And if you went down to Union Station, you asked 20 people about skiing, they'd all say, well, I go to Collingwood to ski. And that's as simple as it is. The next point out of the study that I pulled out is that regional cooperation is critical for the efficient delivery of transit and transportation systems, the building of infrastructure, economic development, education, and healthcare. So the study said if these four municipalities work together and cooperate, our economy will be better in the area. And that there, just underneath it is simply the location for this report. And two great things have happened since that report. And we'll talk about our successes. And one of them is the Center for Business and Economic Development that the town has done, and working together with the other four municipalities and the province and the feds in terms of our Center for Business and Economic Development. And that was recommended in the study, and I think we're having great success with Martin and what's happening inside that office. The second thing is the transit's been coordinated between Wasaga Beach and Blue Mountain, and people can get somebody can live in Wasaga Beach and have a job at the village, and people can move around. So those two things are wonderful things that we have done since 2011. So what I'm here for is that I respect your resolution recently that you supported the Simcoe County response to the regional government review, because unfortunately there is a lack of information out there, and these major decisions are going to be made unfortunately without a lot of input and a lot of detail coming in, and that is an unfortunate situation. I accept your recommendation. But the point and what draws me here today, it'd be a shame if government restructuring were to occur and be limited to Simcoe County, and we didn't look at and consider the dynamics of our region, our power of place, and those four municipalities as they function together. And that means the town of Blue Mountains is in the Grey County. So I'm just here to say that. I did put a suggestion out there for a resolution that tried to be respectful of the situation, and started with if municipal restructuring occurred in Simcoe, that consideration, not that we make a decision or we recommend the town of Blue Mountain be merged with Collingwood, but that consideration be given to our power of place and that report that was done in 2011, and that any restructuring that does occur should take advantage. In other words, this window is open right now. It may be closed for the next 20 years, and we would be remiss if we didn't recognize the dynamics between Blue Mountain and ourselves. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the link to that report. It is an excellent read, and I do recommend it. Now, okay, and I believe that the CAO had spoken with our deputy regarding our ability, in that the public consultation has already concluded, which you would already know, and that council has already accepted the county's position. What the committee is probably recommending is that, so that we're not contrary or without consultation with our neighboring municipality, we wouldn't be doing anything that would put them off. So we do have a motion, and so before I put this, I'm just going to read what the suggested recommendation is, and then I'm going to go to the public just because we are making this recommendation. So it reads as follows: that the committee receive the presentation and comments from Don May and forward to the province on his behalf. So before I get a mover and a seconder, is there anyone in the council chambers who would like to comment on that? Okay. so seeing none, then I will ask for a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Deputy Mayor Hall, Councillor Doherty, and sorry I let you get away, but do you have any further questions to Mr. May before we carry on with this recommendation? No? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Doherty?
Actually, I would have just one question through you to Mr. May, and that is, were you able to make this presentation to all of the referenced municipalities?
Yes, I've been invited to speak at a public meeting in the town of the Mountains specifically. I was contacted by the mayor and met with the mayor and Councillor Sampson, and they have taken certain actions in terms of making recommendations to the province from the town of the Mountains, and I will be speaking at by invitation there, the same presentation. I don't really intend to go to Clearview and Wasaga Beach at this time. I'm just doing this on my own, and I think I've said what I've said. I mean, if they would like to have me come and speak, I'd be glad to.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you again very much, Dawn, for that. All right, so I've read it. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Those opposed? Do you want me to call again? All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so next we have 5.2, the Stormwater Pilot Project, and we have Mark Palmer and Nick Keast from Greenland Engineering. Welcome, gentlemen. Looking forward to this report.
Committee Chair Jeffrey, thank you for having us tonight. Vice Chair Doherty, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hamlin, CEO, and staff. We're here to give you an update on a project that we started in November 2017, and I'd like to recognize the Chair for her support and acknowledgement getting through a comprehensive application process, but we got through it and we're well underway. We're speaking tonight about a project that is happening in Collingwood. This started a couple years before, actually through the Centre for Business. A 17-year-old student went through your offices in terms of economic development and brought a technology to Greenland. It's a family owned company, and it's an internet sump pump. So when they came to Waterboy on Hume Street, which some people call me, what could you do with this technology? Well, you could do a lot of things with this technology. So we put our brains together and how could we scale this and work with others. So we ended up putting together a team. It's a number of small businesses, and we also have the Environment Network working with us, and the town of Collingwood, and also it's being funded by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So it's a comprehensive study, and it's about smart water for properties. There's a lot of news today about flooding at the lot level, the residential level, riverine flooding, and what we're doing is an urban analysis of these smart Internet of Things technologies. There are two that are being profiled. One is SafeSump, the Internet sump pump, but also a company out of Toronto called RainGrid. And this harvests water from rooftops, so it has a big impact potentially on source water protection as well. We're looking at climate change. We have a number of metrics we have to address through the FCM application, and I'm pleased to announce we are actually achieving those with a final report anticipated in March of next year. So to get out of the starting gates, Martin Ridlow and his team were great. We had a blitz of the public. We went out with a public meeting. We had a website, collingwoodpilotproject.com is operating. And within a month and a half, we had 150 homeowners sign up for the program for these free pumps and free RainGrid systems. We have just over 50 that were provided, but an overwhelming response. But what was interesting is we did our inspections. There is a need in the town for having owners understand sump pumps and the issues surrounding maintenance of their pumps. So that's one of the things that we're finding already. But also with this study, what's unique is that we've also been funded to construct a number of rain gardens and also some permeable parking lots. So one of our offices has a permeable parking lot, so that was a significant kind contribution, but also we were the engineers of record for Trinity United Church, and they have a very sophisticated infiltration gallery working there. So we're monitoring all these sites as I speak, and we'll be doing that for the rest of the year. So I'm going to introduce Nick Keast. Nick is one of our new engineers, one of our IT wizards at Greenland, and he's the engineer of record, and working with my son Eric Palmer. Eric drew the short straw tonight, so that's why he's not up presenting, but I'll have Nick walk you through some of the analytics that we have so far.
Yeah, thank you for having us. us. We appreciate the opportunity to give you guys an update on how we're utilizing the data. Not only are we collecting it, but one of the metrics that Mark spoke to was we're looking at reducing the amount of runoff coming off of individual sites, but mainly in small events. So the small 25 millimeter type rainfall events, which happen pretty frequently, and they're looking at reducing those runoff leaving the sites by 50%. And so we began the process with looking at analytic models of the sites to understand, is it going to be possible, what do we need to implement, and how are they currently working? And so as we've been able to collect data, we can start to validate some of the modeling that's occurred. And so this is something that's happened across town on a lot of the different development sites. Stormwater modeling is required in the beginning, it's one of the first steps. And so then analyzing to understand, are they working the way they're intended to, is we're finding huge insights from the data and just indicating that we're noticing that yes, we're seeing a great reduction in the amount of rainfall leaving specific sites, specifically the ones with the permeable parking lots and the rain gardens. But then as we look to the accumulation of rain barrels across town, as well as the safe sumps, we're actually starting to understand how we can bring the data in to again see larger impacts across town on the overall infrastructure. So we bring this data in, it's all connected through the homeowners' internet connections at this time, and it's then being collected by the town and ourselves at Greenland. And what do we do with it? Well, first off, all the homeowners have access to understand what is going on, how much water they're pumping out of their basements on a daily, monthly, weekly, how much rain is being collected in their rain cisterns provided, how much has it rained and released over the few days. But then when we work with the town engineering staff, we've been able to, they're currently doing a lot of storm and sanitary monitoring across town. And we're able to then start incorporating data into lot level releases and what is actually being collected in the mains through the town. And so then we can actually start looking at areas where there's challenges and analyzing for solutions. So we can use the smart data to start seeing, is there anything happening that we can prevent or go out and the town can work to correct. And then the third thing that we're doing is as Mark mentioned, it's been identified that passing the knowledge on to homeowners so that they can understand sump pumps in your basements, rain runoff leaving your home, your land, just what does it look like and what responsibilities as a homeowner we have. And those are some of the interesting things that we're learning. So as an example, the town has brought a challenge forward to say, we have a sanitary inflow, it's an anomaly happening coming out of Georgian Meadows. During wet weather flows, we're seeing an increase in the amount of water or sanitary flow leaving Georgian Meadows. Can you take a look at what's going on in these areas? And so based on collection of smart data, we can take a look at some of the trends and help the town analyze whether some of the challenges with that wet weather flow are sump pumps connected in people's basements, rainwater leaving different lots, or is it a combination? So we can bring that data to the town and we can work with them to help analyze and see, give them an example of how using smart data of these locations can help locate and analyze different problems. And the alternative that we're doing here is we're also seeing how well these technologies are working and troubleshooting for problems on the sites where we've implemented them. Here's a great example of when we turned on the data collection from the rain cisterns this past spring. One site held water, it was great. The other site it rained, filled up, and then it started losing water right away. So we were able to start just going, is there something going wrong with the system? Is the homeowner gardening in the middle of a rainstorm? Are they filling a pool at this time too? What is happening? So we were able to use this to quickly go and say how we can look at the data and you can utilize it to understand challenges in the system that not only stem from larger infrastructure problems, but potential how users interface with it. And so again, looking at integrating this across town, there's the large urban areas, there's different aspects of throughout the different watersheds, what are their different challenges and how can we implement different technologies to assist with it. As an example, we've looked at rolling out rain cisterns across an entire subdivision to see the benefits of reducing the flows in that one area. And so that's something that will be included in the report of just an understanding of what a mass implementation could achieve across town. And so I'll hand it back to Mark here for kind of some of the last steps.
And I'll wrap up. One thing about rain grids that's unique is it reads the weather forecast, so it actually discharges in advance of the storm, so it releases the stress on the storm sewer system. So it's really real-time control is what we're implementing here. Okay, one of the last challenges we had was how do we continue this project in the future? So we're in discussions now with the Intact Center for Climate Change, with the Environment Network in the town, a major program that was launched through the Center out of Waterloo. And Dr. Blair Feltmead has been a wonderful supporter of the project from the very beginning, so hopefully we'll have some good news in the future, which the Environment Network will take the lead on future programming. Okay, I want to wrap up on the Innovation Hub. You probably have seen this across from our office, and the reason I want to present this tonight, I presented tonight a good example of where small businesses can work with the public sector and also not-for-profit organization. What we're hoping to do with our new Commercial Innovation Hub is really be a center of gravity that small businesses in the tech cluster that's growing here in Collingwood can come together and create similar opportunities. So we're going through our site plan process now with the town to develop this new complex, and it will be an accelerator. We'll have our offices there, but really the vision is to be a mini Communitech. We're actually members of Communitech in Waterloo, so we're hoping to replicate that sort of a business model moving forward. And these are just some renderings from the architect as we're going through our process now. So appreciate speaking with you tonight, and if there's any questions, Eric, who drew the short straw, would be happy to answer them after tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So are there any questions? We do have a recommended motion from staff that I will read out, and I think because I'll read what the motion is going to be, and then if there's anyone from the gallery who would like to come up and ask a question or make a comment, they can do so. That the committee receive the presentation and recommend council authorize staff to work with Greenline International Consulting Engineers to continue a flood awareness and education campaign after the project is completed early next year, and any associated costs be referred to the 2020 budget deliberations. So, and our rationale from staff is that partnering in a promotional campaign is generally supported, but if there are financial costs and staff commitment that become required beyond what we think should go through our other processes, then they will be referred there. So, is there anyone who would like to speak to that? Seeing none, then I will ask council if they have any questions of the definite before we put the motion on the floor. Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Through you to perhaps Mr. Keys, the two examples that you gave was your office on Patterson and Trinity United Church. So just for myself in layman terms, it rains, you capture the water, and what do you do with it?
So as an example, when you speak of our office at Patterson and Trinity United Church, those examples are where it's actually being infiltrated through the parking lot. So the design of the parking lots there was done in a way that there's a permeable surface. So the interlock pavers are separated by a specific type of gravel. It's engineered to allow water to infiltrate through the hard surface. And at that point, it's leaving the site through the subsurface ground. And so one of the things that we are also aiming to be looking at in these types of situations is having an internet connected sump pump on the site in Patterson is a great example. Is we're infiltrating the water on site into the subsurface, and then we're actually able to see, are we causing an increase in the amount of pumping that's occurring with the internet connected sump pump right there. So far that's one of the locations where we can look to where is the water going once it goes below the subsurface. In Trinity United Church right now, it's currently just infiltrating through the surface, and we've been able to see that we're not seeing any surface spills, so it's all collecting in the parking lot, going into the subsurface, and then leaving the site through a unknown subsurface kind of soil layers. Other examples are where we have some of the cisterns connected. They're collected off the rooftop, held until the next rainstorm is coming, and a lot of the cisterns just discharge to the street and back to the stormwater system during a dry period. So when it isn't raining and when there isn't water already flowing. Some homeowners have started to take the water and utilize it as a resource. Gardening, pool filling are two of the main ones that we've seen as well. Does that answer your question?
Okay. All right, so if I could have a mover and a seconder, please, for that, so Councillor Hamlin and Councillor Doherty. And actually, just one question I had of staff was, this is great data, and as municipalities move toward becoming smart municipalities and having our own platforms, I think this kind of information in combination with a policy that we just passed the last meeting in terms of asset management and life cycle approach, that this would be very good information for the municipality, and I'm assuming very accessible for us as well. Perfect, okay. So those all in favor of the recommendation? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We're glad to be able to make that easy on you, Eric. All right, so next on the agenda is our staff reports. And 6.1 is P 2019-26. It's an analysis of Collingwood's inventory of potential residential units within the context of the Provincial Growth Plan. And I will ask our Director of Planning to set us up for this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Council, Deputy Mayor. This report was brought for the staff as a council inquiry, asking to what extent we were approaching or nearing our 2031 population allocation target of 33,400 residents in Collingwood. A few comments about population allocation and what it means, because it's a complex concept, and there's a complex process on how population is allocated to a municipality. As I mentioned, the province has different population allocation targets for municipalities, currently to 2031 and coming to 2041. These allocation targets are based on a direction in the province's growth plan, which sets out population forecasts based on a whole range of demographic information. Those population forecasts are turned into allocation targets for municipalities in the Greater Golden Horseshoe Growth Plan area, which includes many municipalities in southern Ontario, but also includes Simcoe County. So Simcoe County would receive a population allocation, which it then converts into a local population allocations for its area municipalities. It does that through an exercise called a municipal comprehensive review. One of those municipal comprehensive reviews is actually underway right now for the 2041 targets. So it's important to understand that there's this kind of cascading effect of a population allocation. And within the overall framework, certain municipalities are identified as primary settlement areas. Town of Collingwood is identified as a primary settlement area, and a primary settlement area is an area that's basically identified as receiving future growth and allocation as the population in Ontario increases. As a primary settlement area, along with the expectation of increased growth, comes an expectation that the community will adopt best practices in planning and community design to manage and deal with that growth and accept that growth. So the report in front of you tonight, it concludes a number of things. It analyzes the population allocation to 2031 and the current proposed and approved development applications. On the one hand, it suggests that we may be approaching our 2031 target based on our current inventory of approved and proposed applications. but it also concludes that capturing a target in a moment in time is a very difficult inexact science. In fact, in order to say for sure whether or not you hit a target, you have to have building permits issued on the ground at a particular time. And of the proposed and approved applications that we have in the backlog, those haven't come to fruition as actual building permit applications. So the report generally concludes that as a primary settlement area, although we may on the one hand have a stockpile that suggests we're approaching the 2031 target, there's a chance we might not be there by 2031 in terms of actual units on the ground. And in the meantime, applications are going to come in. The municipality is going to receive 2041 population allocation targets as a primary settlement area. The report suggests that with future allocation pending, that the focus of the municipality's efforts in managing and adapting to this growth may be best focused on ensuring that our land use and regulatory framework tools are in the best shape to allow council and the community to adapt and manage this growth strategically. I also have Mark Bryan with me tonight, who authored the report, and Mark can answer specific, more complex questions.
Thank you very much. All right, so before we put the motion on the floor and have our committee questions, is there anyone in the public who wishes to ask a question or come forward and comment on this matter? All right, seeing none, so the recommendation is that the Development and Operations Service Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. The staff report P 2019-26 be received. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Hall, Councillor Hamlin, and questions through to anyone? Oh, Councillor Doherty?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you to Director Farr and to Mr. Bryan. This is an excellent report, very thorough. I was really impressed because there really wasn't a whole lot of notice in the whole wide world to pull this together. Generally, notwithstanding all the ifs, ands, or buts that may occur along the way, we are on target for our 2031 population, but we may be under what our 2041 targets may be to the best of our knowledge today. So does this mean that we can, like, having that knowledge in mind, does that mean that we can use this knowledge to accept or decline applications for new residential that is not currently on the books?
Okay, and just before I hand it over to the director, I think what I heard, and you can clarify this as well, is that we seem to be on target for 2031, but we may or may not be.
Right,
And
yeah.
we may or not be for 2041 as well.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
all right,
correct.
so then I'll leave the rest of your question to the director.
So through you, Madam Chair, again, just to reinforce, it really, the ifs, ands, or buts are really the key thing. So staff understand that clearly, and our response is that we would want to monitor this and track it on a regular basis to consider the conversion of these proposed and approved projects into actual building permits. There's a portion of the report that talks about historical building permit volumes and the sort of a general transition to higher volumes, but the increase would have to be sustained and consistent over a period of time to realize the in excess of or the 2031 targets in exactly the time frame that they might come to fruition.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Councillor Hammond. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too would like to echo Councillor Doherty's comments on the completeness of the report. Very much appreciated. And I particularly appreciate the difficulty in estimating whether all the units we've approved will actually be built or not. I thought it was a good comment, if I can say that the suggestion is, as we look at our expected growth, that our best focus perhaps should be to make sure that we're maintaining the character and quality of life that the community enjoys now. And I think, you know, whether it's one extra house or no extra house or 100, I think really that's what everyone wants the most, because I think we all appreciate what we have here. And I have a question. In coming to the population numbers, there's a discount that's applied of almost 18%, and the discount is on account of what's called seasonal residents. And I wanted to understand why we needed that discount. And my question is, in light of my understanding of our seasonal population, seems to be quite different than cottage country seasonal population, where people are mainly weekenders. They come up for 8 or 10 weeks of the year, and you would see why it might give a false reading to include that kind of population as permanent in any way. It does strike me that here the part-time population is more year-round. The people are here sometimes 3-4 days a week. Many of them are transitioning to full-time occupancy, and they do, I'll say, mesh more in with our permanent population, if I can use that word, in terms of using our recreational facilities, our libraries, they're attending our arts events, and so on. So with all of that, my question is why we are discounting our population by 18% to account for what's called seasonal residents.
Thank you. So who would like to field that question? Senior Planner Mark.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Through the chair to Councillor Hamlin. The population allocations set out in the growth plan are based on permanent populations. So the province has recognized that there is a seasonal component in many communities, and they have not included that as part of the population allocations. So accordingly, we did the number crunching based on the census to determine, at least as far as the last census goes, what the percentage of the population that can be viewed as being seasonal versus permanent.
Thank you for that answer. Perhaps we'll have some work to do at the province.
Yeah, exactly. I think that might be something moving forward, that a definition of seasonal, as they understand it, might be better for clarification. Okay, all right, so if there's no other questions, all those in favor of the motion to receive? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, 6.2, P 2019-27, authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, Best Pro Corporation Sunbelt Rentals at 3 Greco Court. And we'll have a presentation by the director. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a site plan agreement for approximately 11,000 square foot building on a property designated industrial. It's located at the northeast corner of Mountain Road and 10th Line. A number of measures have been taken to address the prominent location of the building on Mountain Road, including of landscaping, improvements to the architectural design of the building, and it's presented for your consideration tonight.
Thank you very much. All right, so the motion will be that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council, and that staff report P 2019-27 be received, and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the Sunbelt Rentals development at 3 Greco Court. So before I get a mover and a seconder, is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this matter? And seeing none, then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Hall, Councillor Doherty, and any questions through to the Director of Planning? Councillor
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm very pleased that one of our local businesses has decided to make such a substantial investment by purchasing the site and doing a new build here of such a great size, and also appreciate the extra work staff has done to ensure additional landscaping and tree canopies and so on. My question has to do with this. This is, to my eye, one of the prime sites, I believe our planning director mentioned this, in town that could accommodate an office building. We have a few sites, I would say, still on Mountain Road and on Poplar that I would hope in the future attract some more head offices, like the Partridge one we're going to hear more about tonight. And I was wondering, and so as much excited as I am for our local business, I'm a little sad that this site hasn't been preserved for that kind of higher order use. So my question through you to Director Farr this evening, Madam Chair, is what analysis staff is doing now to look at these high profile sites for future uses?
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin and Director Farr.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Hamlin. There are a number of things that staff are doing right now. First, at operational level, staff are doing a review of the inventory of lands that are designated employment throughout the town, including the industrial lands. We are trying to get a better understanding of the particular uses in the different industrial areas, looking at vacant properties, potentially underutilized properties, and also looking at the character in terms of the business activity in those areas, and working closely with Martin Ridlow through the work that Martin is doing in promoting business in the community. We've been working on developing some of the background work to support an economic development action plan that the mayor has championed. That exercise is planned to unfold in the coming months, and we expect to be able to join some of that operational data with some of the strategy making that will occur through that exercise. Last, and it's pending council support of another item on the agenda tonight, dealing with the official plan review, in the event that council chooses to proceed with that exercise. One of the activities will be to using a better understanding of the industrial areas in the community, look at more refined policies for locating kind of like industries with like industries, and trying to take advantage of strategic opportunities that would be available to the town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation, that is carried unanimously. Thank you. 6.3, Councillor Hamlin will be recusing herself, so we'll just give her a minute. So 6.3 is P 2019-28. It's an authorization by law to execute a site plan control agreement, a commercial parking lot at the corner of 124 Ontario Street and then 174 St. Paul Street. So, Director Farr?
Madam Chair, this is a site plan agreement to facilitate the construction of a commercial parking lot. It's located on two properties, 124 Ontario Street and 174 St. Paul. The site plan agreement basically allows for the construction of this parking lot, and it's in the downtown core. It's permitted on the property, and specific mitigating measures have been introduced to help ensure that the parking lot fits into the surrounding area. The proponent has included infiltration trenches on the property, which could be viewed as a LID type technique, and have also planted larger and attractive trees around the perimeter of the property to help it fit into the surrounding area.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none. That the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. That staff report P 2019-28 be received, and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the development of a parking lot at 124 Ontario Street, legally described as Lot 23, west side of St. Paul Street, part of Lot 55, south side of Ontario Street, Plan 282 as in CG 18664, Town of Collingwood, County of Simcoe, and 174 St. Paul Street, legally described as Lot 24, west side of St. Paul Street, Plan 282, Town of Collingwood, County of Simcoe. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Hall and Councillor Doherty. Any questions from the committee members through to staff? Councillor Doherty?
Yes, thank you. Through you to Director Farr. This is in the Heritage District. Is that correct?
I know that there, on this property, there was a designated or a listed heritage building, and that has since been demolished.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything in our heritage? Is there anything in our heritage bylaw now which can prevent the demolition of a heritage building in favor of a parking lot?
So, sorry.
No.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Doherty. This application on the site as it stands today has a history. Council recommended against the demolition of the heritage building that was on the property. The property owner appealed that recommendation, and it was the council ultimately elected to allow the demolition to advance, given the dynamics of the court proceedings and the matters associated with that appeal.
Okay, so thank you. So just to reiterate, because I was one of the councillors who had initially voted not to permit a demolition, and my understanding was we were unlikely to win an appeal because our heritage bylaw does not address demolition and what can be installed in place of a heritage building or a building in a heritage district. Is that
Councillor Doherty, just before staff answer that, I don't think it's germane to what we're voting on this evening. This evening we're voting on a site plan. I think that your direction is going back on a previous decision, and if we need further policy work in that regard, that perhaps it could be brought up under other business. Is that fair?
I was bringing this forward to a recommendation, but I can certainly hold that.
I think we need to,
Other
because this is
reasons.
specific to the site plan.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you have any other questions outside of that?
No.
No. Deputy Mayor, no other questions? All right. So with that then, I will call the vote on the motion as read. All those in favor? Opposed? So noted. Thank you. And Councillor Hamlin. Right, thank you. So that brings us to 6.4, P 2019-29, the proposed Partridge head office at 70 Huron Street, the zoning bylaw amendment, and I'll ask Director Farr to present this item to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Advance to the, thank you. So this is a property located at 70 Huron Street, or it's otherwise known as Highway 26. It's west of Niagara Street, north of Simcoe, and on the south side of Huron, as I mentioned. This matter was originally, there are applications originally filed for official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment in May 2018. A statutory public meeting was held to present for the public the details of the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. At that time, the applicant had additional details that they wanted to work on with regard to the specifics of the zoning bylaw, building design, etc. So they advanced with an official plan amendment for council consideration. It was subsequently approved by council in September 2018 by the county in October 2018. Of course, that official plan amendment facilitated permission for the commercial use that's contemplated on the property. So since then, the applicant has made a number of changes to their zoning bylaw amendment to provide sufficient details such that it can be evaluated. And tonight, I have planner Lindsay Ayers, who's going to present some of the specific details associated with this application.
Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you, Director Farr, and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. So, as Director Farr indicated, a statutory public meeting was held in June of 2018, and at that public meeting, a number of issues were raised. As a result of the comments received from both the public, town staff, and external agencies, Partridge did revise their site plan concept. So I apologize, it's a little small to see on the screen, there's a lot of detail. But this revised concept was presented to the public at an informal public information center that Partridge hosted on May 30th, 2019. Planning and engineering services staff were all in attendance, and it was generally well received by those in attendance that evening. I'm not going to go into significant detail with all of the concerns that were raised at the statutory public meeting, but I will highlight some of those concerns and how Partridge has addressed them in the revised site plan. One of the primary concerns raised was the original concept proposed a building height of 17 meters. Based on the feedback, Partridge has revised their site plan and their concept to 12 meters. And for committee's consideration, a maximum building height of 12 meters is consistent with the downtown core commercial parent C1 zone, and it also is consistent with the zoning or the maximum building height associated with the residential properties that surround the Partridge site. Traffic concerns were also raised at the public meeting. A proposed road widening is to occur on Huron Street to accommodate a left-hand turn lane. And subsequent to this site plan at the June 12th Development Review Team meeting, it's the access off of Simcoe Street. Let's see if this works down on this end. Originally, it was a vehicular access. It was later restricted to be an emergency vehicle and pedestrian bike access. And as of the June 12th meeting, Partridge is committed to eliminating all vehicular access via Simcoe Street, so it will be exclusively a pedestrian and bicycle pathway at approximate width of 3 meters. Drainage and stormwater management was also a significant concern raised. The surrounding area has been prone to flooding and drainage concerns over quite a lengthy period of time. Over the last several months, Partridge and the town's engineering services team have been working on identifying improvements to the long-standing drainage issues in the area. And we want to note that the improvements will not 100% resolve the drainage issues in that area, but they are anticipated to significantly improve the existing conditions there. And the work will be undertaken jointly between Partridge and the town, and I understand that a staff report from engineering services speaking further to that matter will be anticipated in the future. Landscaping and buffering were also a concern raised by particularly the neighboring residents. Partridge has proposed, try this again, a 1.8 meter privacy fence that runs all along the perimeter of the commercial property. So all of the residential boundaries have a 1.8 meter privacy fence, and although not demonstrated in this slide, there is extensive landscaping proposed around all of the perimeter as well. And in terms of setbacks, on the east side of the property, Partridge is currently proposing a setback from the property line of a minimum setback of 19 meters. Right now, the building layout on the west side of the property is 29 meters, and on the south side of the property, the rear yard setback, there's currently a setback of approximately 58 or 59 meters, and that 58 or 59 meters is including a potential future addition that Partridge may construct in the future at the rear of the building. It is important to note that, I did it again, pardon me, that although those are the setbacks currently proposed, the actual C15 zoning exception or site-specific exceptions that are being proposed tonight have reduced those setbacks by approximately 4 meters, and that is just as the site plan review process is underway, just to allow some flexibility should the building footprint have to shift somewhat to accommodate a site-specific concern. So although 19 meters is right now showing on this site, we have proposed a setback of 15 meters in the zoning bylaw amendment. And this just gives you an idea of the proposed architectural renderings that were submitted in support of the site plan application, which the town received on May 16th, 2019. And these renderings were also presented to the public at the informal public information center that Partridge hosted on May 30th, 2019. So based on Partridge's timelines, it is their desire to proceed with undertaking this necessary site remediation work this summer. As a result, they have requested that the zoning bylaw amendment proceed in advance of the site plan control process. And although the zoning bylaw amendment is not required for the site remediation work to proceed, it is the town's understanding that having the necessary zoning in place will provide Partridge with some additional comfort prior to incurring the expenses to be incurred through the necessary site remediation. Partridge's first site plan submission was reviewed by town departments and external agencies and discussed at the June 12th development review team meeting, and the town does anticipate a second site plan submission will be submitted this summer. Planning services are tracking a range of issues through the site plan review process. These include building form and urban design, landscaping, active transportation, particularly the pedestrian and bike connectivity through the site itself, drainage improvements, and the Huron Street Road widening. It's anticipated that the site plan review process will take a few months to complete and that a site plan agreement will be brought forward for council's consideration in the fall of this year. And it is the opinion of planning services staff that advancing the zoning bylaw amendment at this stage in the process is not premature, and that sufficient provisions have been put in place to safeguard the public interest while still allowing Partridge a measure of flexibility in finalizing the building and site design. And then finally, just for the benefit of the committee as well as the public, should Partridge begin remediation on this site this summer, they have provided the following contact information should the public have any questions or concerns that arise while the site works are occurring. And this contact information was also provided in a handout that was given at the May 30th, 2019 Public Information Center. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up then, we will invite Partridge, please come forward. Mr. Boyd, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. With your wise choice of moving my deputation after staff's, I probably get to jump through my slides a little faster. There is a fair amount of overlap, so I'm going to do my best to just highlight some of the specific points that staff weren't able to fully get to. I would like to introduce a few folks that are here from our team. We have Sandy Higgins, who is our VP of Planning, as well as Ken Harvey, whose name you just saw up there, who's been providing the project management for the site. And we also have John Proctor from Crozier & Associates. So any of those members of our team are available to answer questions if any of the members of the committee feel that would be warranted after our presentation. You've seen the site location here. I'd just like to note that beyond just the standard statutory requirements for public meetings, we held 3 additional public information centers beyond what was required, including a number of on-site specific meetings with neighboring residents. In those cases, they were actually to deal with the town's existing stormwater management issues, and we were trying to find out what the concerns were of the citizens and how we could facilitate a collaborative solution to that, working with the town. A number of the facts that I would like to highlight, we've seen a number of this in the staff report, but again, the uses in particular, that this will be zoned specifically for our office use as a head office for our national headquarters. We are consolidating our national staff complement from Calgary as well as from Wasaga Beach. And on opening day, we would expect that there will be essentially 130 new jobs essentially located right next to the downtown, growing to as many as 150 in a few short years after that. So significant move for us, and we think something positive for the community as well. In terms of the building height, as you heard, it was reduced from 4 stories down to 2, primarily because of what we heard from our neighbors. We plan on being their neighbors for a good long time, with this being our national headquarters, and we took what they said to heart, as well as part of some internal space planning that we did to optimize the footprint that we needed internally for our building use. Stormwater management, again, from the specifics of a standard approach to site plan, even though we're dealing with zoning right now, this has all been somewhat kind of interlaced, because again, that's where much of the public concern has been, is what's going to be built once the zoning is approved. We'll be dealing with all the stormwater that lands on our site as any traditional development would. We have that responsibility, and best engineering practices will take care of that. On top of that, we're dealing with the existing stormwater management problem that exists right now with the flooding that happens occasionally with certain events. And so again, we have, as you've heard, we've got the beginnings of a really good engineering solution that we can implement in collaboration with the municipality. Simcoe Street access essentially has now been eliminated for vehicles and is just for pedestrians and cyclists. One item that wasn't mentioned, and this would be highlighted with site plan review and part of your standard design package and requirements, is that the lighting would have to be dark sky compliant, which means that there wouldn't be glare and light pollution onto neighboring residents, which has come up a number of times. You've seen the site plan. That's a colorful version. You can get a better sense of what the illustration that staff had showed you in terms of the amount of green space. The area that was identified as potentially some future footprint is actually outdoor amenity space for our staff to be able to have lunch outside and enjoy a good working environment. Mentioned the building height, building footprint, the screening, fencing all around, stormwater management, and the parking spaces. You'll see in the staff report there was a mention that there's the minimum parking that's required, and we're providing more. In fact, parking for this use is not identified in your zoning bylaw, and so we provided additional information to staff on saying how we got to that number, and that is specifically being a national headquarters and all the people we're bringing in. We, even over time, we expect the specialized uses that we have in our business is that we'll be drawing our staff from a regional complement. And so for every single spot there, except for the visitor parking spots, are identified for someone who will be employed there. So it's not a case of trying to overpark it. We don't have kind of walk-in customers or anything like that. It's really about properly providing that infrastructure for the number of staff that will be housed in the building. There you can see the cross sections, and again, having reduced it down to a 2-story. And if we look at the upper one to the left, yes, you're seeing the same view there. So to the left of the building, you see a tree, and then that little stick there, that's the size, that's a human being. So you can see the scale across that entire site and the distances we have. So in that case, that's Huron Street at the front, and at the back would be Simcoe Street, and then the lower one shows it crossways, as if you were, that amenity space I just mentioned in the back of the building, as if you were kind of cutting the site through that way. And so we can see with the berms and the landscaping and that, the building will easily fit in and not have any sort of visual impact to our neighbors. We have some elevation drawings. Logan, what we saw from the audience is that they are a little exaggerated on that screen there. So you're not seeing the vertical exaggeration there. These are simulations of what we're proposing when we get to the site plan, which is the next step of this process. And what's highlighted in the red there is the Stormwater Solution. What we're proposing there, in its essence, is to take the stormwater that is now flowing into an open ditch and then going back into a pipe that goes underneath the highway. And in that kind of swale area is where there's a lot of flooding right now. We're going to essentially create a system where it's a closed pipe, bring that onto our lands so we don't need to disturb that swale, and then bring it back into the pipe going underneath the highway. My understanding, and this is why we have our engineer here so that I can be corrected accordingly, my understanding is that not only does this provide some capacity of storage, but generally for the more common storm events that we have, it will limit the amount of flooding that happens. And so it's not a 100% solution, but it definitely makes the situation very much better. And I will say, at our last public information center, it actually was quite pleasing to hear that one of the residents who was quite adamantly sort of energized about this issue thanked us and said this was an extraordinary solution, and she was very happy with that. So it was, I think everyone is really seeing a win-win on this scenario here. Next steps, we have moving forward with the zoning bylaw amendment. Again, site remediation, reminder that this is an old landfill, and so we can't just begin building. Even if we were to be given a permit right now, we have to clean up the site, and that takes some time. And we'll get the approval from NPCA then after that to do the construction. And then we're hoping by the fall, working with staff to finalize all the details that most of today's discussion has been in terms of the design. Once we get that, then we'll be able to start the construction of the actual development. As I said, we're available for questions, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that addition. So with that, is there anyone in the audience, the gallery here this evening, that would like to come forward and comment or ask a question? All right, seeing none, then I will ask the committee members if they have any questions of staff. Councillor Hamlin?
I have just a comment, if I may, Madam
Absolutely.
Chair. I just really two. One is I wanted to thank Partridge for choosing Collingwood for their national head office. The investment and the jobs and the work they're doing here is such a great addition to our town. And secondly, I wanted to thank both the Partridge people and our own staff for working so hard to resolve the many resident concerns, because I remember, I don't know if it was this time last year, but it was sometime last year, there were so many upset people here in the gallery at one of these meetings. And to see the creative solutions to height, landscaping, setbacks, stormwater, it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Doherty, do you have something?
Yes, I do. And first of all, I would also like to echo very sincerely Councillor Hamlin's comments. We really, or speaking for myself anyway, welcome Partridge, and I really do congratulate you and thank you for taking the residents' concerns so seriously and working so hard to accommodate them. It doesn't happen all the time. Just a question then in regard to the parking lot. A thought that had occurred to me, which maybe is moot, given your explanation about the anticipated need for 150 spots. But my thought was initially about if the need for 150 did not appear to be on the immediate horizon, was there an opportunity just to create a fewer number of spots and leave the rest of the land's soft surface or landscaped, which would also, I would expect, assist with drainage on the lands, especially after it's properly graded. So that was my first question. My second question was, is there consideration being given to permeable asphalt for this parking lot?
Madam Chair, to the committee member, so two questions. The first one, it's a little more complicated because we have to remediate the site. So we're dealing with potentially up to $1 million to sort of clean the site. And we can't kind of halfway do that and then come back and after the fact, then work on paving a piece that was kind of left out there. The mobilization costs and everything in terms of the construction make that somewhat cost prohibitive and challenging. Also, just the overall arrangement of the site, it could potentially cause complications on how we're managing just the standard stormwater, because we need to make it all work with the curbs and gutters and stuff that we have. The second part, porous pavement, I do not believe we have looked into that, but my understanding is that given that the water table is very high there, and again, dealing with what was on the site and everything, it's not exactly a site that would lend itself very well to a low impact development technique. The purpose of getting the water into the ground is to either recharge the groundwater and there's minimal soils there and then you're down to rock, or for storage. And my understanding is that it would not lend itself well to that. And I'm looking over, I mostly got that right-ish. All right. We can provide more technical information, but it's not the kind of site that lends itself well to low impact development techniques, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so any other questions? Okay, seeing none. All right, our recommendation is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council. That staff report P 2019-29 be received, and Council enact and pass an amending zoning bylaw designating the lands at 70 Huron Street legally described as part of water lot in front of lot 44, concession 8, parts 1, 3, and 5, reference plan 51R 41426, and part of Peel Street north of Erie Street, registered plan 282, Town of Collingwood, County of Simcoe, as a site-specific downtown core commercial exception 5, C15 zone in order to allow commercial development of the Partridge Lifestyle Communities Inc. head office. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Hull, Councillor Hamlin. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you very much again, gentlemen, for the presentation. 6.5 P 2019-30 authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, Shipyard Side Launch 2. It's Side Launch Way and Emerson Muse, and I'll ask Director Farr to set us up if we have a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members may remember as council that this matter came forward as a zoning bylaw amendment to council in May. At that time, staff advised council, and I'm advising again tonight, that this for 11 townhouse units. The proposed development complies with the urban design manual and the special area architectural design guidelines for the shipyards. A number of provisions in the agreement were flagged for council's consideration, including warning notices to property owners, one of which refers them to ongoing development in the area and the potential for blasting. Effectively, though, this completes the matter that was brought forward to council in May. It's consistent with all the information that was provided at that time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the gallery wishing to speak to this matter? Or introduce yourself, please.
Frame Building Group, and I'm just here if there are any questions regarding the application.
Appreciate that very much, thank you. All right, putting it on the floor that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. That staff report P 2019-30 be received and council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the Shipyard side launch, 2 townhouses, side launch way and Emerson Views. And the council direct the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan control agreement once the associated zoning bylaw amendment comes into full force. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Hall and Councillor Doherty. Any questions from the committee members in respect to this? Pretty straightforward. Councillor Hammond?
I just have one question, Madam Chair. I have been approached by one of the people who bought a unit in here with a concern that they didn't know there was a boat permanently docked in front of their unit. And although there was a sign out front saying that there was day docking, there was no sign saying there would be a boat permanently docked there. And of course, that's where the Huronia parks 24/7 unless it's doing its good work over the summer. So my question is, we have some 7 warning clauses in the site plan agreement that requires owners to give notice to any potential purchasers. And it's everything from the fact there's a waste treatment plant there that might have odors from time to time to the fact that it could be blasting because there's future development. And I was wondering whether it would be, and I guess this is a question for our planning director, through you, Madam Chair, whether it would be appropriate to consider adding a warning clause to the effect that purchasers should be aware that docking of boats may occur in side launch.
Director Farr?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Hamlin. That's really the prerogative of a committee. It can certainly be put forward as a motion, and then in the event that it's approved, staff can incorporate that into the agreement. The buildings there do front onto a public walkway. It's unfortunate that the property owner wasn't able to surmise that the docking of boats in that area would have been permitted. As an additional precautionary measure, it wouldn't be out of order in a warning clause. So I'll leave it to the committee to make a decision as to how they'd like to consider it.
And just maybe for the CAO's benefit, Councillor Hammond's question is with regard to the parking of the Huronic at the site, that one of the residents that is there currently didn't have the understanding that it would be there 24/7 throughout the spring, summer, fall seasons. And would it be appropriate to have a warning clause along with the other ones in the agreement that would require notice to potential purchasers that does occur? And our Director of Planning has responded that it would be up to the committee, that it's actually the prerogative of the Development Committee in the development of those agreements to do that, but that the committee can make a decision maybe to ask for that recommendation. Do you have anything further you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Your Worship, and my apologies for leaving temporarily. I mean, the only concern I would have is the effectiveness of that kind of a warning clause and what obligation it is to ensure that it is enforced.
Thank you. All right. Yes, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Hamlin, just for point of clarification, was the comment brought forward by a purchaser of a unit to be built or an existing homeowner? To be built. Maybe through the CAO, just to report back to council, could we ask the developer, I'd be very surprised if somewhere within their contracts it doesn't stipulate uses. General contracts stipulate uses within a certain radius, and I'd be interested purely from clarification standpoint.
Yes, sure, go for it.
contracts with me, I can do a review and get back to you on the uses. Focus on the development.
Sure, no, we appreciate that, and we'll leave it up to, unless the committee directs me otherwise, and that satisfies Councillor Hamlin's intent, that we will just ask staff to follow up on that and bring us forward any new information to the council meeting that we need. Okay? Yep. Thank you for being able to provide that to us. All right, so is it okay, we're not proposing an amendment at this time, we'll just wait for staff to work on that, okay. All right, so we have a mover and seconder, I did. All right, so we'll vote on the motion then, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously, thank you. Next, 6.6, P 2019-31 is an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement, Pretty River residents at 90 and 92 Raglan Street. And Director Farr, if you can set us up for this one too.
Okay, Madam Chair, thank you. This is two properties located at 90-92 Raglan Street. The property at 90 Raglan Street is currently occupied by a bungalow, single detached residence. The property to the south of 92 Raglan is vacant. And the site plan agreement entails an approval for a senior's residence. The site plan agreement has been reviewed relative to the urban design manual. The intent is to provide a capacity of 36 beds. There have been higher end facade treatments provided in the architectural design. Just as a note, the bungalow to the north is to remain. It currently provides a transition to the adjacent single detached residential properties to the north. There's a provision that a 45-degree angular plane be maintained from single detached residential properties, so sufficient provision regarding integration of the neighborhood into the future in the event of any expansion, although that's not anticipated to occur. That existing residence is expected to remain as such, either for rental or to support the retirement residence. Submitted for your consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the gallery wishing to comment or ask any questions on this item? Seeing none. That the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of Council. The staff report P 2019-31 be received, and Council enact and pass an authorization bylaw to execute a site plan control agreement for the Pretty River residents at 90 and 92 Raglan Street. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Doherty, Deputy Mayor Hall, any questions? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Not a question, but a comment, and it positive in the sense that this is going back a decade ago now, but the timing. There was a gentleman by the name of Bud Crooks, who's a former RCAF pilot, and unfortunately Mr. Crooks passed away, I think, within the last month and a half. And I remember he and another gentleman, I can't remember his name, but I'll remember for council, were before council. They were before an affordable housing task force, again about a decade ago, talking about a very specific project similar to this. And I think that they would be very appreciative to know that something's coming to fruition, specifically on 92 and now 90 Raglan. So, anyway, it's nice to see. It's a decade in the making.
And particularly in the health overlay and building up all the synergies that go with that area. All right, if there's no other questions, sorry, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Are the proponents here today?
They are. Have a question? Call the floor.
Yes, so if I understand, the nature of this facility is a higher care memory type facility, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We currently own Raglan Village across the street, where we offer independent retirement residence and assisted living. And what we don't do is we don't offer dementia or enhanced care. So there's a void in the marketplace, and we're going to solve that. So unfortunately, we're all getting older, and we face challenges, and one of the challenges we face is dementia leading to Alzheimer's, and we're going to solve that here in Collingwood. We're going to provide a state-of-the-art facility to look after people who are challenged by those situations. So not only is it dementia, but it'll be enhanced care if you have issues that challenge you beyond what we can do in assisted living, which is not a secured environment. This will be a secured environment.
That's very good, yeah.
Well, thank you.
And before you leave the podium, is it Mr. Mc, are you Mr. McDonald?
I am.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have any follow-up? No?
Yes, is on what part of the continuum in terms of pricing, affordability, would this facility fall?
It's expensive. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
That's
it's very highly skilled labor, which is expensive, and the staff ratio is high in our business. So you know, we work on a 6-to-1 ratio. So for every 6 residents, there's a staff member, and we're 24/7, and they're very educated caregivers. So unfortunately, it's expensive, but it's a need, and I've never been challenged with the amount of money we charge. It's the value we create, and and solving the challenges facing us. It's unfortunate, but it's reality, and we're going to deal with it. And we're proud to be here in Collingwood. I think we're going to build a state-of-the-art right across Simcoe County. I think we're going to be the best. Well, I wouldn't do it if we weren't the best, right?
Well, thank you, we're happy to have you here.
Well, we appreciate it. And I might comment that the staff here on the planning side is fantastic. I've been treated with respect, and the process has moved very smoothly. So I congratulate you and your group, because I've worked in other municipalities and I can't say the same, but here I can say it, and I'm proud of you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I know Director Farr will take that back to us as well. Okay, if there's no other questions then, all those in favor of the motion, that is carried unanimously. And last up under staff reports, 6.7, P 2019-32, the official plan review town file, D08119, Director Farr, big one.
Madam Chair, I'm just gonna come around to the podium.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, Committee Deputy Mayor, all members of the public, staff. Tonight I'm presenting on a proposed official plan review terms of reference for your consideration. Just an aside, I've been here perhaps a little over 2 months now, and I think one of the most frequently asked questions is how's the official plan review going? So there is a sense that there's a desire among council to have this presented in front of them for their consideration. So working with the CEO and staff, we put something together for you. We are seeking council direction on the official plan review, taking a phased approach. We're asking you to approve a terms of reference subject to some changes, considering the material I'll be presenting to you and capture in the report. And that would allow us to hire a consultant and advance at your direction. Why an official plan update right now? The intent would be to integrate the content of recently approved town plans or plans that are pending approval, conform to legislative changes, and I'll speak to those in greater detail momentarily, and to provide up-to-date tools to staff and the council to deal with current issues and expected additional population growth in the community. What is an official plan? An official plan is generally, for the layperson, a combination of 2 things: policies dealing with a range of matters of interest to the community, and maps and schedules that are attached that show where things go: transportation issues, land use issues, environmental issues. But as I mentioned earlier, official plans are mandated by the province through the Ontario Planning Act, as I described in the context of an earlier presentation this evening, the Ontario planning system is a sort of a hierarchy-based system. The overarching document that guides land use planning in the province is the provincial policy statement. Simcoe County is one of those municipalities that falls within the Places to Grow Act, otherwise known as the Growth Plan. And we are an area municipality within County of Simcoe, which distills some of the policy direction from the province down to the local municipalities. And just incidentally, our local official plan is required to be in conformity with the county's official plan. The official plan can be found online at the URL that's posted on a presentation for members of the public watching at home, or you can just simply Google official plan Town of Collingwood and you can view the current official plan. The current status of the official plan that's in effect now is it was approved in 2004. There have been regular updates. In 2009 there are commercial industrial policy updates. 2014 there were some substantial residential policies that brought the town's plan into conformity with the 2031 population allocation. This is a provincially mandated population allocation that was distilled down to the community through the County of Simcoe official plan. And most recently, the town's official plan was updated in 2019 with source water protection policies and some additional policy content. What has changed since 2004 and more currently, a Places to Grow Act is now a Place to Grow Act. We've seen the recent approval of Bill 108, which introduces changes to the Ontario Planning Act and a number of other acts. Those changes haven't received full proclamation yet, so we're not sure what the specific conformity dates are for coming into conformity with that document. There are more changes coming at the provincial level. The regulations that implement Bill 108 are expected to come forward in the fall. And additionally, the province has stated that they intend to update the provincial policy statement. That process has not yet initiated. In addition to this, the County of Simcoe is working on, as I mentioned, sort of distilling 2041 population allocation through to the area municipalities. Through their exercise, it's called a Municipal Comprehensive Review. That review is expected to be completed in 2021. As it happens right now, it's on hold, and although it's expected to, the town is expected to conform to all these different pieces of legislation by 2023 and the county by 2022. But as I mentioned, the county's plan is on hold, awaiting the conclusion of the regional government review. Earlier in tonight's proceedings, there's a delegation referencing the regional government review. For the benefit of everyone, the regional government review is a process initiated by the province to review 8 regional governments, Durham, Halton, Muskoka District, Niagara, Oxford County, Peel, Waterloo, York, and Simcoe County, and their lower tier municipalities, which amount to 82 municipalities. Public consultation for that exercise concluded on May 21st, and it's expected that a confidential report will be presented to the minister at the end of June. But going back to that item, I mentioned that the county had put its process on hold pending the conclusion of this exercise to ensure that they are dealing with the municipal entities that they will be dealing with into the foreseeable future. And that suggests that one of the items that has been discussed in concert with the regional government review is possible amalgamation of municipalities, but no one knows the outcome at this time. I mentioned that the town has a number of plans that have been approved or are in progress. These plans would find their way into the official plan through updated policies. So you have a wide range of plans that are also currently underway and proposed. The plans that are, I guess, not yet initiated, but expected to be undertaken over the next few months include the Economic Development Action Plan that this council will hear more about in future meetings, and the Strategic Plan, which is of more immediate interest. The strategic plan is the community strategic plan. Staff have advanced the notion of updating the strategic plan to reflect the current thinking of this current council, and it's expected that exercise will occur, or at least begin through the summer. last, the other thing that's changed is growth pressure. Growth pressure has come to a very crystallized point in this community. It's driven by demographics over the next 20 to 25 years. The Greater Toronto area is expected to receive another 3 million people. At the same time, the retirement population is supposed to also increase dramatically in the number of millions. As these demographic forces, these two demographic forces alone influence, have a wide-ranging influence over municipalities in Ontario and mainly lifestyle destinations in the South Georgian Bay Area and Collingwood particularly. The growth pressures also translate into increased cost and reduced availability of housing. You have an effect of very highly inflated real estate markets to the south, where people leave and can migrate to a less expensive destination that causes an upward pressure on availability, supply of housing, and cost. We're also dealing with new development concepts, particularly over the last 2 to 3 years, that the municipality has not dealt with in the past. You've seen a number of items come before council where even outside of the built boundary, developers are proposing more intensive development. That's a change for this municipality. And typically in the past, municipalities have struggled to get developments outside the built boundary to consider higher density concepts. Lastly, in terms of growth pressure, the municipality is looking to focus its economic development strategy, and that translates into ensuring that there's enough industrial and commercial land available to meet future employment targets for the municipality. And it's important in the context of these extreme residential growth pressures that sufficient industrial and commercial supply be provided and that they'll be located in a strategic way to meet the community's needs. So the proposal for official plan review in front of you tonight has several different stages. Typically, the core stages of an official plan review include community visioning, background studies, and discussion papers, which form the basis of further detailed consultation, and a kind of a preliminary directions report, which goes out to the community to confirm that what has come back through consultation and the review of all the information that's been provided is consistent with the community vision. Just a few comments about the different stages. We would be in what you call the startup stage right now. In the event that the proposed terms of reference was approved, it would be approved. Staff would then go forward to retain a consultant. One of the first events would be a detailed council workshop where council is engaged in terms of what their thoughts and expectations and the scope of the exercise would be. The community engagement plan will be prepared by the consultant describing how they intend to consult with the community in a refined, detailed work program built off the terms of reference would be produced for council's review. The next stage, of course, is a vision information gathering stage. It involves the standard types of community consultation events, large group, stalls at the farmers market or at the ski clubs or the hockey arena to gather people's thoughts and ideas about the vision for their community goals and objectives. This culminates in a council report, which then gives shape to further detail work on background studies or what you might call key themes. Staff put forward in this report strictly for the purposes of structure in terms of reference some conceptual theme areas. These would be defined more clearly through consultation with council and the public, but these are typical themes that you would see in an official plan. The next stage, direction and recommendations. They indicated the work that had been done to that date culminates in a report that goes out for public engagement. The consultation is married with research and with analysis. So I mentioned that there are a lot of things happening that are outside the municipality's control, some within, but the pivotal ones outside the municipality's control. These include the regional government review and legislative changes. There's some other activities I mentioned, the municipal comprehensive review, and then the town's strategic plan update and the completion of other studies. This would likely impact the overall project scope in terms of the timing of studies. Council may want to consider the unknown potential outcomes of the regional government review and any decision that they would take on this project. A suggested strategy for dealing with that and forthcoming Planning Act changes would be to advance those portions of the project that are not as labor intensive or dependent on community consultation, essentially what you'd end up with a consultant that had engaged council in a fulsome sort of way, began to familiarize themselves with the policy content that the community has now, better understand some of the technical issues like growth management. And we'd also initiate discussions with the county to try to synthesize our work with the work that's being done with the municipal comprehensive review. Activities that would be delayed would include things like visioning, public engagement, and advanced development of issues. In terms of the quantum of time that the delay might occur, you're looking at something in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 months. It's expected that there'll be greater clarity in the provinces indicate that's going to be the case before the end of the year. There's a component in this terms of reference that speaks to project administration in terms of staff teams. There's also the concept of a project steering committee and project working group that would involve council members and members of the public. Those details would be discussed, and you'd be able to engage on those in greater detail when we brought forward the council workshop. So in the event that committee was to recommend approval and councils ultimately approve this, the next steps would be a revised project phasing, including revised timelines to provide adequate instruction to the consultant team that was considering working on this. We'd issue an RFP, go through or that is a request for proposals based on that terms of reference, select the consultant, and then initiate official plan review activities and council engagement. And that's one presentation. Please answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you very much for that. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to ask questions with respect to this report? Okay, seeing none. Let's see what we have here. That the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. The staff report P 2019-32 be received and council initiate the official plan review to be undertaken in coordination with completed updates to the community-based strategic plan and in a phased approach respecting the outstanding reviews, plans, and other matters identified herein that may impact the review scope and timing, and that council authorize the issuance of a request for proposals for consultant services to lead the official plan review based generally on the form of the draft terms of reference attached, subject to any changes and flexibility as may be required based on the resolution timing of the outstanding matters. A mover and a seconder, please, and then we'll, yes, Deputy Mayor Hall, that's okay, and Councillor Doherty. Questions? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Want to thank you very much again for an excellent presentation and a well delineated plan moving forward, as delineated as it can be in this age of uncertainty. However, my questions are, first of all, I would have thought that one of the earlier activities that we could undertake would be resident engagement, because it's qualitative and it provides us, you know, with a platform against which we can begin to build our objectives. And what I'm hearing from you is that you're seeing that a little farther down the road.
Through Madam Chair and Councillor Doherty, the unknown outcome of the regional government review would suggest that the more modest steps be taken in the early stages if the committee was to recommend approval and council was to approve this. The scope of the possible outcomes of the regional government review can be dramatic. In the content of the terms of reference indicated the potential provided provisions to address the possible outcome that amalgamation could occur and the municipal entity in its current form might not exist. This is just an unknown outcome of the process. To go to the public in the context of that uncertainty, to me, for your consideration, could create some confusion in terms of all the things that would be going on at that time in the event that the province came out with an announcement. So having greater certainty would allow those issues to fall away and then the focus be on the official plan. It's just the timing is unfortunate. If we were to advance as with public engagement in the fall without certainty around that issue, it could be problematic.
Okay, thank you. I still don't understand how getting some feedback from the public wouldn't at least act as a barometer for us, or at least for them to express what their vision is for the community themselves. And so whether we are, as an example, whether we're amalgamated or whether we continue to exist as we do today, those objectives, those sentiments from the public would be the same in my view, right? How you feel about where you live isn't impacted by your borders.
Councillor Doherty, so the CAO would like to add to the conversation, if you don't mind.
Thank you. I think what we could do is that we could build in some accelerated public engagement if we get greater certainty on the regional government review earlier. I think what we're trying to guard against is spending too much time and effort in an exercise that involves a consultant that could be quite costly, that would not optimize the benefit of that consultation. So I think our intention has always been to engage the public early and as much as we can, and we can accelerate and broaden that once we get the certainty. But I think it would be problematic for us to go out with a consultation strategy that's deep and wide without having that certainty. That's what Adam is saying.
Right.
So we can certainly act on your suggestion of accelerating that if, for example, we have some certainty late summer, early fall on the regional study review. And the other point I would add is that if council approves the terms of reference and us going out and getting a consultant, we're actually actively pursuing the OP review by doing all of the background work that needs to be done to get a consultant on board while the province is contemplating the outcome of the consultation of the regional review. So the point you're making actually could be advanced, because by the time we hire a consultant, we could actually be in that position where we can bring that certainty to the community. But I think it does matter where we end up, because if we ended up with a different form of government, then the official plan process would have to be revisited. And if you look at the terms of reference, we have to have an exit strategy in the event that the governance changes are so significant that it doesn't allow us to advance an official plan review based on our current political configuration.
Thank you. And that was well considered, actually, the exit strategy. Another question, among the activities that we would undertake, would we do a review of other municipal, what we would consider to be best practices, look at municipalities throughout Ontario or nationally or even internationally that we consider to be doing a particularly good job, and having a look at their official plans and take some learning? Like, would that be part of, or could that be part of the process?
Through the chair, that's an essential part of the process, and it would be one of the criteria that we consider when we're selecting a consultant, their expertise.
Okay.
And myself and staff as well would be looking at different municipalities and how they handle things differently in terms of the issues and objectives that this council would want to address.
Thank you. Sorry, just one other, and this is just going to the proposed terms of reference. Set down for a sec there. Section 1, purpose. First item that's identified as purpose is provides a vision and plan for the community for the next 25 years. And my thought was because hopefully in the end, this becomes an official plan that is good for the municipality, but is also reflective of the values of the municipality. I'm wondering if that language could or should be changed to something that would say reflects the vision of the community and a plan for the next 25 years or some such. Is it, do you see the difference there?
Through the chair, there, that kind of concept is sprinkled throughout the terms of reference, certainly the intent, and there's minor changes that I would expect we would make to the terms of reference, and that can easily be made if you feel that it more accurately reflects the sentiment behind the study.
And CAO in?
Yeah, thank you. The only other point I would make is that I think it's a great idea, a good suggestion, but our official plan has to comply with provincial guidelines and the county official plan, and if there's complementarity amongst the various documents and the views expressed by citizens, then I think it's an easier path. It's much more difficult if it is contrary to provincial policies. So because our official plan has to conform with those. So there are some statutory, legislative policy requirements we have to comply with that would be within the context of your suggestion. The other point I forgot to make in my earlier statement is that we're doing this official plan, or we're launching the update in spite of the recommendation from the province and DC we put on hold. But you know, I've been around this council table long enough, and I know how anxious members are to advance this. So we're advancing it on the basis of going out and getting a consultant. But I think we're also trying to minimize our fiscal risk associated with this in the event of fundamental changes impacting on how we do this. So we're advancing this, but we're doing it cautiously.
Thank you. And I for one do very much appreciate that, and I do know that members of the community also appreciate the fact that this is being recognized as a high priority. So thank you very much for that. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. Perhaps through you to the CAO or to Director Farr. I hope through this process we actually have an opportunity maybe to go back and pull off the shelves and dust them off some of the good work that's actually been done over 20 years. The Vision 2020 document is one that's front and center. Coincidentally, Robert Voigt, who is here this evening, was a former employee with the municipality and did a lot of really good work between 2010 and whenever he left the municipality. To your point, Councillor Doherty, I agree that it's good to be looking at best practices from other communities, but from the foundation and from a framework, a lot of really good work has been done. And I'm thinking that for members of our community who are maybe 10 years or newer, it would be a really great opportunity to introduce them to some of those guiding principles and visions that were created 20 plus years ago. And quite frankly, particular to the Vision 2020 document, you know, it's 20 years old and yet it's 20 years ahead of its time.
Just as a comment through the chair, attached to the terms of reference is a kind of a compendium of various different studies and projects that have been completed by the municipality more over the probably last 15 years. And it's a kind of a handy tool for looking at the policy history around land use planning in the municipality, and it has links to each of the effective documents, so it's quite instructive in terms of seeing what's been done, where there might be opportunities for doing updates, but that's available for the public and council to review.
Yes, and to add to that, I would also bring up the sustainability plan that was done in 2008, which inventoried the entire 2020 vision into what had already been accomplished and what needed to be carried forward. So we'll have a lot of great work to go on. And to quote one of my colleagues who's not here tonight, that we don't want to aim just for best practices. We want to be excellent. We want to be the very best. So. Perpetual excellence. I like that. Thank you. All right, Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate and agree with the phased approach that is being suggested to us. Certainly recognizing the regional government review underway and the changes still coming really under the place to grow legislation. I just wanted to add my thoughts that regardless of what happens to the boundaries of our municipality, whether they stay the same or change, there are some things that I would hope we would continue to review and implement. And what's on my mind this evening is, for example, traffic and how we handle that in our community. And I think regardless of whether our boundaries change or not, I would hope that our exercise would be reviewing how do we handle traffic traveling from one side of our built-up neighborhoods to the other. And so we have, I know still a lot of residents worrying about 3rd Street being that connected currently. So anyway, traffic is one thing that's on my mind. The second thing, and Director Farr touched on this of course, is the economic development initiatives and the employment lands. In particular, the changing face I think that we all see on who our main employers are, and it seems to be shifting from primarily or users of industrial lands to also including a high component of those who would use our commercial lands. And I would hope that that might not be an analysis constrained by changes that may occur to our governance structure, because I think regardless of that, we still need to have a hard look at our employment strategies and what lands are designated. And as we heard from Partridge tonight, for example, there wasn't even a provision in our zoning bylaw that addressed parking standards for their kind of use. It's just old, that's all. Okay, so that I mentioned traffic, economic development, and also I'll just mention as another example tonight are the urban design guidelines, which aren't addressed in a very fulsome way in our official plan. I know we have an almost 10-year-old document, but I think that I would love to see, as we go through this, some thought to that, in light particularly of, I know a lot of concerns our residents have over the infill housing that's happening in established neighborhoods, and what should the setbacks be and how should we decide the maximum height. I know we've had a few things come through, thankfully, from our building department to help control the grading and the water disbursement, but I think we could do more regardless of our governance structure on some of these things during our mandate. Thank you.
CEO Min, did you wish to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think we could look at some of those things. I just want to say though that we're taking a phased approach, but we're not going to take a piecemeal or fragmented approach. I think we also need to be fiscally responsible, that whatever we do is relevant and makes sense within the broader context. And while the municipal boundary may not be relevant, we've got to be cognizant of some of that. And some of the perennial issues mentioned by Councillor Hamlin, I think, is worth considering. And as we advance official plan discussion, these are some of the things that I think will highlight with the consultant as particular irritants within the community that needs to be addressed, and perhaps addressed on a more expedited basis. So these are kind of the nuts and bolts of the traffic issue, the issues around urban design, and some of the concerns that have been expressed regarding consent and severance and infill development. I mean, I think those things would have to be thought about within the context of the overall policy. So we'll advance them as much as we can without sort of compromising the holistic nature of the review.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, then I have a mover and a seconder. So I will ask for the vote on the motion. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Director Farr, and to your staff for all that hard work and great report. So next up, we have no reports or minutes of other committees and boards. So that takes us to departmental updates. And do we have anything? Nothing further from planning. I think you had enough tonight. All right, engineering, Director McDonald.
Nothing to report tonight, thank you.
Okay, that's great. All right, so we have time for public delegations. if there's anyone who would like to address us for 5 minutes under the purview of development and operations. Seeing none taking me up on that invitation, we will move to other business. 10.1 is regarding 5052 Broadview Street RIA request to waive parkland dedication fees. It was referred from council on June 10th. And do we have some kind of staff input with respect to this? Oh, Director Farr? Sure.
Through the Planning Act, the municipality has the right to, through the consent process, take cash in lieu, and where consent for severance application is filed, staff typically include a condition that cash in lieu amount be taken. In the case of the subject request, the Committee of Adjustment made a recommendation that the fee, the cash in lieu fee be waived by council. Staff were not certain at the time whether the committee had the authority to do that. Since that time, I've been advised that staff confirmed that in fact the committee does have the ability to waive that provision. And I would add that the Parkland Dedication Bylaw does provide council with the authority to waive cash in lieu under section 5 subsection 2, which indicates that council may by resolution waive all or part of the requirement to convey land, cash in lieu of land, or any combination thereof. In the instance under consideration, two lots adjacent to one another merged. It's for members of the public, it's an unknown consequence for many people, an unknown consequence that if you purchase two adjacent lots and keep the title in the same name, that at a certain point those two lots will merge as a result of the same name being on title, and it could be quite frustrating and shocking to residents when they attempt to apply for a development approval of some nature. So those are the circumstances of the matter that's been being put in front of the committee. So the provision is there, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay. Is there anyone here who wished to speak to this item? Okay, and seeing none, that our motion is that council waive the collection of cash in lieu for the provisional consent to sever a property located at 52 Broadview Street based on an evaluation of the specific circumstances unique to this severance, and that any future request be considered on its own merits. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hall, Councillor Doherty. Are there any further questions with respect to the, yes, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I'm very comfortable supporting this motion in that it's very specific on future requests being considered on their own merit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Do the committee members have any other business? Councillor Doherty.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize that my best Perry Mason line of questioning didn't get to the point quick enough. But my point that I wanted to make was that our current heritage bylaw does not address demolition of buildings in the heritage district and specifically what can replace them. And thus we have a situation where now I realize that the building did not have any heritage merit in and of itself, but to be replaced by a parking lot, in my view, is a travesty. So I'd like to send a message or a motion to the Heritage Committee to take a look at the bylaw and consider closing that loophole.
So
I don't know what the exact mechanism, maybe the
you're
clerk can
probably
help me with
requesting a staff
that.
report, and they would consult with the Heritage Committee. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Okay. All right, so if you're okay with that wording, you move that that we have a staff report as for that purpose. Is there a seconder for that Deputy Mayor Hull, are there any questions with respect to that request?
Is this a general question or a general motion, or is it specific with respect to that item for which I have a conflict? In which case I would leave.
I would,
No,
I think
this
it's
is
a general
This is very
request.
general.
All right,
yeah.
okay, then
Yeah.
no questions.
all those in favor of that request? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Any other business? No, I would just like to thank our CAO for the expression of the celebration and support of We the North. We approved his change in the clothing protocol for this evening. No, you're not going to be fined. That was awesome. So with that, then I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Who would like to? Councillor Hamlin. The motion is adjourned. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.